This is Leadership Development Series. Today's guest is Silvia Ahmed. Hi, Silvia.
Hi, Anurag. Good to see you.
Good to see you, and thank you for graciously agreeing to doing this interview.
Not a problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Silvia, one of the things I'm very passionate about is demystifying leadership. People look at leadership and they are not clear what it needs to be. Everybody wants it, but everybody also feels the weight of it. And when it comes to leadership development, people often wonder what they have to do to get there. In this leadership development series, I'm trying to talk to leaders and asking them about their journey. How did they invest in themselves? How did they grow up to where they are today? And what lessons or advice they might have for executives today who are looking to invest in their own development. With that in mind, I thought of some people that I have myself had the pleasure of working with, and your name was definitely top of the heap. I think we met like 2007, 2008 timeline,
Mhm.
and I have seen you build teams. I have seen you deliver results across organizations, Network Appliance, VMware, EMC, Dell, and now at Veritas. I wanted to have you here and share your perspective on leadership and your
Sure,
journey.
sure. Happy to share my experiences. So, I've been fortunate to be in the right business at the right time. I started quite a while ago in this industry, and I didn't set out to become a leader, or I didn't have a specific, oh, I want to be in this position by a certain time. I really was interested in the technology and all of the new developments that were
Mhm.
happening and how that was actually impacting our lives. I started off in a technical support, sustaining engineer type of role. And really, I was focused very much on learning the technology, on just absorbing everything around me and keeping up, because that was the time that things were very quickly evolving. What I found over time was that there was a need, there seemed to be always a need for people who could effectively communicate, who could see the bigger picture, who saw the systemic issues, and also had the energy and desire to go and fix and organize and deliver value into what they were doing for the customers. So what I found was that as I spent more time and I walked and stepped into different situations, I realized that I was actually able to influence, that people were actually listening to what I was saying and following. That's when I realized the weight of actually that leadership responsibility. Even though I didn't have a title, I knew that when I raised questions or concerns, people actually did listen. And sometimes they looked at me for guidance on certain situations, even though I didn't have an official title.
Mhm.
So that's one aspect of leadership, that you can be a leader without a title,
Right.
without the explicit official responsibility. It's more about your desire to solve problems, your desire to listen to what the organization needs or the people around you need, and always stepping up to actually address those issues, you know, confront and not back away from the
Mhm.
challenges. And in particular, if you're able to bring people together and solve the problems at that point in time, you start to gain that trust. As you gain trust with your peers, you, you start to evolve as a leader in the organization, and you start to get recognized. And eventually, I made it into a manager role. And once I became a manager, then it was a little bit different, right? Now I have the official responsibility. It's something that I must do, not that I
Mm.
step up to do.
Right.
But with that role, you can take two views of it. One is you do the tactical things and what is expected of you, and you're just managing the tasks and who does the tasks and making sure. But that's not leadership necessarily, that's execution. Mm-hmm. And in order to be a leader, you really need to be doing more than that. What you need to be doing is really managing the ecosystem that you're having to work in. That means listening to your peers, listening to the execs, listening to the customers, and then figuring out the best way to deliver the product or service that you're responsible for. It also means that now you also have the responsibility of developing other people. Your responsibility doesn't end with just the one thing that you're supposed to deliver. You're part of a broader group in the organization, and you need to be working with other managers and other directors and other functions, and really figuring out how to move the organization forward. And again, it's about listening to people, really understanding the goals and objectives of the organization, and having some clear objectives, and be willing to actually make the tough calls. Leading, of course, in a very successful organization where there's plenty of budget, there's sufficient resources, is very easy. It gets very difficult when things are uncertain, when you have to still deliver, when you cannot, hire more staff, or you have to deliver something in a much shorter time. Then is when your leadership skills actually get tested, because now you have to solicit the help of everybody. Right. And the extra efforts above and beyond what people do day to day, you're only going to be able to do that if they have the trust and the reputation that you're not going to abuse that trust that they've given you. And so as a leader, being transparent helps gaining the trust, caring about people, being a good listener, and knowing how to take the tough calls is part of being a good leader. And then not forgetting, in particular, that you're there to enable everybody else. There's a term about there's a lot of the business literature about servant leadership. Mm-hmm. And I think this is one concept that you really need to understand, and you need to use it. Now, there's other situations where you have to be more directive. In a crisis, you behave very differently. But at the end of the day, you're there to enable the rest of the organization. I've been very fortunate, been recognized for the contributions I made. And I've had the opportunity also to expand from where I started in being able to be put in positions for responsibility for different functions. So started off as a tech support and sustaining engineer, moved into quality assurance, then into DevOps. Then I've managed development teams, managed user interface teams. I've had a very fortunate career that I've been able to expand into all of these areas and be able to do it effectively. The principles that I've used and the things that I rely on are the same in terms of the leadership that I've provided all of these teams.
Thank you, Silvia. I think you covered a lot of ground there. How you started in a growth market, you got in. At that time, the industry was booming. You got in, and at the same time, you were not just focused on your day-to-day, but you tried to take a broader picture of where things were going. And you kind of put yourself out there. What else can I be doing? And Correct. You noticed what your strengths were in terms of how you were able to influence people without having the authority, that people were really listening to you. And once you could tap into that, it opened this whole world where you could move into management positions. Exactly. And there, I think the two themes I picked are trust, that came up in a big way. And yes. I think trust and caring kind of go hand in hand. So I'm putting them in the same bucket. And then reputation. And the reputation could be that this manager is trustworthy, or it could be that this manager is focused on results, or that this manager delivers. But having that reputation really allows you to build on your career. Right. So this actually makes me think, none of us start with the idea, oh, I want to be a vice president tomorrow, or I want to do this. First, for an executive who is, let's say, a few years into the organization, everything looks far away, right? They are too much, they are way down the totem pole, so as to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
At one end, everything looks very far away. And at the same time, in the world we live in, we have CEOs of billion-dollar companies who are less than 30 years of age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that also beckons to them. And I think you did mention that some of these learnings that you have in terms of what it takes to lead are true for larger organizations as well as small ones. From your standpoint, when you are a young executive coming in, looking to grow yourself, are there certain activities or certain tasks you should look at doing so that it allows you to better orient yourself, whether you want to go towards large companies or small companies, and what path to take? Does
Mm-hmm.
anything come up for you in terms of how, what worked for you?
Sure. You know, early in my career, the one thing I focused on was just absorbing the knowledge from whichever source it came. I was avid at reading, not just the technologies I was dealing with at the time, but also a lot of the literature that was available on leadership, on management skills, organizational behaviors. You know, take a much broader view of the skills that you're going to need as a leader in the future. That's one aspect of it. The other thing that I think, I hope I've done is that I've always made sure I'm not thinking I'm the smartest person in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that I am learning from everyone else and sharing my knowledge. There's a lot of wisdom that comes for people that have been in the industry for a long time, for people that have been there and failed. I have always found that I have learned more from my failures than I have from my successes. Of course, when you succeed at something, you reuse that knowledge. But
Yeah.
when you are the type of leader that when you fail, you acknowledge that failure and you reflect, what could I've done differently? You solicit input from others. What could we have done differently? That starts two things. One, where you get into the practice of continuous improvement, not just personal, but with your organization too.
Mm-hmm.
That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that then as you reflect and you see what you needed to be doing differently, then you can ask yourself, why didn't I do it? Did I not have the information, or is it my lack of experience, my lack of whatever? You now actually understand why you didn't do it and what now you need to do to be better prepared for that next scenario where you're going to have to make similar decisions. So this is all about continuous learning, continuous development.
Mm-hmm.
The more you learn, if you're able to accept the fact that you know so little, and it's the collective knowledge in an organization that makes things happen.
Right. I think I was nodding very vigorously to everything that you that you said, and I was also thinking about some of the traits that really make these things possible. One is being open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
The way you mentioned, a person being open to learning from not just themselves but others, looking at their experiences, be it successes and failures, and saying, okay, these are my do's and don'ts. The second thing I noticed is something which is hard to do is courage. Having the courage to go out to others and ask them for feedback. That can be
Mm-hmm.
very hard to do.
It is. And I, and I didn't do a very good job at that early on. I think I'm better at it, not where I need to be, but it's an important aspect. It's a difficult thing to do.
Right. And one last thing I felt was there is honesty and humility. And I put them together because they kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
A willingness to look at yourself honestly and say, okay, I did not think about this. Okay, I can be better. Because unless that willingness is there to honestly and with humbleness look at yourself and acknowledge what's going on, any kind of development would not happen.
Exactly. And that same behavior has also helped me at different points in my career when I felt like, okay, I'm actually doing things and contributing at a different level than I'm being recognized. And that then I'm able to have that conversation with my manager and ask for that recognition, because as a woman, sometimes we're not, maybe this is changing with the generations, but I think we've also been hesitant to highlight our own contributions and ask for that recognition. And it's not always the title. Sometimes it's maybe pay equality. Sometimes it is the title, and it's not so much for the title itself, but it's that it reflects that you're being recognized for the contribution that you're making. And when all of these things are in balance, right? You're working on the thing you like to work on, you're happy with the people you're working with, and you feel recognized. Right. Then, you're able to be more productive, and the stress level is a lot less because, you're working hard, but you're also getting that reward from the work that you're doing.
Right. So this self-awareness around knowing your own value not only not just stops at recognizing what value you have, but then you have to step forward and claim it. And I think what you're saying is for women executives, the claiming it part is equally important.
Exactly. And I would encourage all women, I mean, encourage everyone, but in particular women, to basically assess where they are. And if they feel they're not getting their level of recognition, there's very professional ways and effective ways of communicating that.
Right, right. Thank you for sharing that. Once we enter the organization, we have to manage all these relationships around us. Earlier, you mentioned how in your journey as a leader, early on, you realized that it was not just about doing the tasks that were assigned, but to get that systemic view, to reach out to people beyond what you were working on. I was wondering if you had some advice, some lessons to executives around that aspect. How do they manage at their level and above in order to navigate to wherever they want to head in their careers?
I talked about development and learning and observing and really learning about organizational behaviors. There's a lot of programs available for people that want to be at the VP level and above, that they don't want to stay within a certain function. Let's say they don't want to be a VP of engineering, but they're aspiring to be in a much broader business role. There's a lot of professional programs that are a little bit on the expensive side, but they're definitely worth the investment to get that formal knowledge and that framework that helps them actually learn about the organization, bring that knowledge back to where they are and apply it and add more value. I talked about actually changing functions as a manager. One of the things that does for you longer term is that it gives you a good understanding of the different functions and how those functions actually work together to make the organization successful. As a executive at a more senior level, it's very important that you understand those dynamics, because it will reduce the number of blind spots that you will have when you have to make difficult decisions. So I think investment in programs like that are important. It might seem like theory, but it just gives you a framework. And then when you bring that framework and you use it inside of the business that you're in, you start to see how to use it. You see how to actually produce more value, either through efficiency improvements, It might be by looking at different markets in a different way and opening up new markets, understanding maybe how you want to transform your organization. Let's say if it's a very organization that's been around for a long time, it may be very well established, but you know very well that the markets are changing drastically and very quickly. And so as a senior leader, you need to be able to react very quickly, and having those frameworks and really looking at things holistically are important aspects of growing into those more senior roles.
Got it. Got it. And you did mention that people can go out and do these programs. The way I understood it is these programs may feel very academic because you're trying to learn about a different function, a different role altogether. But once you have that knowledge, that actually better prepares you to interact with those groups and helps you navigate yourself within the organization.
Exactly. I have also seen effective leveraging of coaches in various situations. In particular, I know I've known a couple of women who on their own went and hired personal coaches to help them actually develop the skills, the soft skills, and get feedback, independent feedback, where they could actually focus and start working, because they had that longer term goal, or their goal was 5 years out, they want to be in a more senior position. And having an independent person that's not your manager, that is not within the organization, sometimes feels a little more, I'm not sure what word I want to use here, but maybe it's a little safer place, right? It's someone independent from your day-to-day job. So that would be one other source for personal growth and development.
Thank you for boosting my profession.
I've actually seen people make good use of it. So
Yes. I think there was one aspect of the previous question that I want to go back to.
Sure.
And maybe it's the way I framed it, it did not came out correctly. So let me try again. So I think so far what you covered talks about how within the organization, dealing cross-functionally, having those skills and investing in yourself proactively really helps. When it comes to managing up, are there any recommendations that you might have when it comes to managing up that executives should follow or
yes.
can benefit from?
Yeah. My experience has been that when you're talking with or interacting with someone above your level, the executive level, they're expecting several things from you. One is transparency. Two is that you provide the data that you need to support your recommendation or opinion, whatever the situation might be, that you actually have done your homework and you have the data to support what you're doing. And secondly, it's very easy to identify problems. You don't go to executives with just problems. You go to executives with, yes, we are having this challenge. Here's the ways that we can actually mitigate it. Here's the support I need. And really be prepared with a plan. Can't go to an executive without a plan. They have enough challenges on their own, and time is of the essence, as we've already discussed. That's the minimum that is expected when you're interacting with leaders in the organization.
Thank you. Thank you. Another thought that comes to my mind, Sylvia, is around investing. Rather, let me backtrack. The question I really want to ask is, and this comes from the leadership development survey we did a few months back, where more than 60% of the people said that their organization invests less than 8 hours in their leadership development. And when the same people were asked, what about you? What do you invest? The majority, I think about 47%, said they invest less than $500 annually on their leadership development. And if I take this data point and in parallel I myself have come across a lot of people who are stuck at either the senior manager level or at the director, senior director level. And they say, nobody is willing to invest in us. We want to grow, but we are not getting the attention because the senior leaders are being tasked to deliver results. They are very happy bringing their own people, bringing their own team whenever they can, because they have to give results in quarters and they are not willing to do the people development required to pull up people like us. What's your perspective on this?
I actually have been very fortunate that I've had a lot of support from my managers, and not even just my managers, but other executives and leaders in the organization. But what I have found most not interesting, but that I think works is if you invest in yourself and the people in the organization, the leaders in your organization see that you do that, I think there's a stronger willingness to invest in you. If you come forward with plans of your own, that really sends a message that you want to contribute, that you want to maximize your skills being leveraged by the organization. And when you come yourself, you do the research yourself. It's a lot easier because now you're basically, it goes back to the whole concept. I don't come with a problem. Oh, I need you to come up with a plan to develop me into a VP. I come with, here's what I'd like to do because this will be the value I bring to the organization. Personally, I did that at one point, not too long ago, where I came to my manager and I said, we're struggling with this problem in the organization. And here's some of the thoughts I have about it, but I really would like to take advantage of this other program that's available. It's an expensive program, but the value is that I will be in a program where I'm going to be with people of senior director, VP level of many different functions. They actually were taking some of the problem statements that were being provided by the applicants for that program, and one would be selected. I said, if mine gets selected, I'm going to have free consulting to think about this problem. And when I come back, this is what I'll do. That was sort of like, okay, how much does it cost? Now we went right away into how much does it cost?
Right.
And it got approved. And I went to the program, came back, applied some of what I said I would do. And then there's that more willingness to keep on investing if I come back with some other proposal because they could see the value.
Right.
But you can't go to your manager and say, I want to be a VP and I need you to tell me what I need to do, because there isn't a checklist. It's all about you driving yourself, you taking accountability and ownership for your own development and coming up with what is it that you want. Your manager doesn't know. You may be very talented and be contributing at a very significant level to the organization, but maybe your desire is not to go to the next level, right? You want to be continuing the function you're in, and maybe that's okay. Right. That's what you want, right? Your manager doesn't know what you want, and they can only help you if they know what you need, and then how does that actually help the business?
Be your own advocate and
be your own advocate. Yes.
Right.
I mean, if you're lucky enough and there's people around you that advocate on your behalf, that's even better.
That's even better.
But you have to be your own advocate. As an example, also, a while back in another company, we were having a women's in engineering sort of discussion, and we were trying to promote hiring more women and looking at career development and advancement for women. It was an interesting conversation because we started off with what do we need, and eventually we all got to, but what is the value for the business? When we were able to answer those questions, how would having more women in the organization and having more women in certain roles and functions benefit the bottom line? It was a different conversation. The sponsorship came a lot easier than just talking about what is it in it for us at a personal level.
Actually,
So
I'm
you
thinking,
always have to
sorry,
tie
go
it
ahead.
back to the bottom line.
Yeah, I kind of interrupted you there. My immediate thought was that discussion where you were able to tie why having more women or how having more women executives would help the bottom line of the organization. I'm sure a lot more people would want to know how to go about it. So for anybody who is watching this, would you be open to kind of reach to responding to people who want to
Sure,
connect with you on something like that?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Happy to help. There's a lot of organizations, there's been a lot of initiative among women in engineering. I know of that one organization, at least two industry forums have been created out of those conversations. So
great, great. Sylvia, I will now switch tracks. I will ask you a question which seems like a very frivolous question, so please bear with me.
sure.
What word or phrase your team will say you are always using?
That I'm always using. Oh, we can do it.
Oh, we can do
Don't worry, we can do it.
it. Every time you put some more on the, you have to do this also, don't worry, we will do it. I like the fact that you did not say you can do it, you said we can do it.
No, it's always we can do it. It's always we.
Yeah, great, great. Often we talk about, and I think you mentioned as well, that as leaders, we have to continuously be learning. When a career spans so many years, time goes by, the landscape also shifts. In your experience, given where we are, do you see any shifts that have happened that leaders need to adjust to or relearn, or to be more to continue to be as effective?
2020 has been a very difficult year for everybody, even for those companies where they have not been significantly impacted by everything that's going on. Yet the people in the organization have gone through a lot. And I think leaders that, because there are different styles of leadership, there's no right or wrong, because you apply the leadership that is most effective for the situation you're in. Given what has happened in 2020, as leaders, the most important thing that we need to focus on is on the soft skills that maybe we haven't used in the past because we've been so focused on delivery. But at the end of the day, that delivery only happens because of the people in our organizations. And having the empathy and the ability to listen and respond to the needs of the organization, people in the organization are really what's going to carry us through as leaders in the next, through this pandemic, and then through probably in the next year, because we're not going to be out of this crisis immediately. The organization I'm with today, we've been very fortunate that I think our leadership has actually been very effective in and disciplined about communicating with us and really listening to the organization and making the necessary adjustments for the people, because at the end, the people are going to be the ones that deliver the products and deliver the success for the company. We're working very hard, as everybody probably is experiencing. We're all working much longer hours probably than we have in the past. But you only do that because you feel that the organization is also taking care of you. So I think as leaders, that's something not to forget.
Right. And actually, in my mind, this ties back to some of the earlier principles that you laid out. A person who is self-aware, knows about himself or herself, would be that much more better equipped to have empathy for others. And you already talked about how important trust and caring is.
Mm-hmm.
And by being empathic, leaders are able to show that at organization level itself, people can trust the organization
Mm-hmm.
and know that they are there to care for them.
Yeah,
Thank you for
and
sharing that.
one of the things that, from a personal level, My father actually started his business, I think, when he was 30, and had that business for till the day actually that he passed away, which was over 60 years later. And the one thing that I do recall from him running his business is that the people he hired in the first year that he opened his business is the people that were there till the very end. I mean, the people retired. Some of the children of the people that originally were working there joined the business. And one of the things that he always said is you have to take care of the people in your business.
It's all about people.
It's all about people.
Let me see. I think I have covered most of the things I had in mind. I don't know if there is a right answer to this question or if how to even approach it. People, when they into leadership roles, they say, okay, now I have to manage some people, I can do that. They learn that art. But then they realize as they go up that it's not just about managing the day to day task and making sure the team is effective. It's about developing a vision. It's about at some point, being an inspiration to the team. Is there anything from your journey that stands out for you that you can offer to people watching this? What can help them be more inspiring in their leadership?
So just sort of reflecting on when people have told me, oh, I look up to you or you inspire me, because people have said that. And they'll say always, you and somebody else, right? And the commonality between the people that they've mentioned is really how we have behaved in the organization. Do we seem committed? Do we have that positive attitude? Do we actually, our behaviors align? Do our behaviors align with what we say?
Do you walk the talk?
Do you walk the talk? Yeah. That's what I see in common between when people tell me, oh, you inspire me, and they'll mention me or somebody and somebody else, or even when sometimes they don't mention me, but they mention somebody else. I sort of always think, okay, what is it about that person? And what I find is that they're authentic. They're usually very positive. They help, they enable everybody else, and they have a very tight alignment between what they say and what they do.
So that actually begs a follow-up question. People say that, oh, if I have to go to a management level, I need to do a MBA or I need to do a PhD or whatever, depending on the role that they are playing in the organization. Be a specialist, be somebody with some more credentials. At the same time, most of the things that we have talked about so far are things like trust, things like reputation, being empathic. I mean, B schools do talk about these things, but there would be just one or two courses on that. I'm just kind of curious, what's your view on people who believe they need extra credentials when it comes to coming into management roles?
You have to have an area that you're an expert in, or that you're considered someone that has achieved a certain level of credibility. And it doesn't have to be that you have a PhD or anything. In some cases, that might be necessary. If you're certain areas, you might need it, right? So when I talk about being successful, it's not just about the soft skills that we talked about in terms of the leadership. You have to have developed some credibility in some function. You're good at something. That's where you start to outstand. That's where when people come to you, if you are known for something, and then you build on that. It's important also to stay up to date, especially in high tech. I don't want to date myself, but when I started, there was no wireless devices in everybody's hand. You have to keep up with what's happening in your industry. If you're in development, obviously there's a lot of new technologies that are coming in. You need to be keeping up to date and be changing with what's happening in your industry. You can't be outdated in your technical aspect of your job and be a great leader, because you're not able to actually have those conversations and listen to the advice and make those decisions. I think there's many ways to achieve that knowledge, and the key thing is that you just need to keep up.
What I'm inferring is you need to have kind of a core of great skills, functional or technical, and then
Yes,
around that, you need soft skills to grow as a leader, and you need kind of a
exactly.
balance of both and stay up to date on both the fronts.
As you're going up the ranks into a more senior role, you're going to be responsible for a more diverse set of functions.
Hmm.
You have to have some basic understanding of each one of those functions. And that's why the opportunity to rotate in different functions within an organization is of a lot of value. If you see some of the CEOs in the industry that have been very successful, they've gone through different departments in their business.
Correct.
And there's organizations that actually, if you want to get to a senior VP level, they have programs where they rotate people through different parts of their business for that reason. If you're going to be leading a multifunctional or cross-functional organization, then you at least need to understand the fundamentals of each one of those functions.
So I'll make this question the last question, which is,
Sure.
as one goes about investing in themselves, there is certainly their manager with whom they can discuss, get some feedback on how they are doing, not doing. They can sign up for programs. What's the role of mentors, and how can people go about seeking mentors, and then once they have identified somebody, getting the most out of those relationships?
So mentors can be different people within the organization. It doesn't
True.
have to be someone inside of your group. It doesn't even have to be someone inside of your organization. You could have a mentor outside that is maybe someone in the same industry. I know, for example, people that have worked for me in the past, from time to time will call me and we'll have conversations where they're asking my advice and we talk about some problem they're dealing with, and mentorship happens that way. I think the most critical part is, one, not expecting one person to be your mentor for everything. Go for who are all the people that you know that you respect for their knowledge, for what they've achieved, and take some of their time if they're willing to give it to you. And having more mentors around you is better because you're going to get different perspectives, and that'll help you get a better set of options of what best works for you. But the most important thing when you're asking for someone else to give up their time is that you are putting the time yourself in preparing for that conversation, knowing exactly what is it that you want to get out of it. Because if I come up to you and I say, Anurag, I want you to be my mentor, but I'm not sure what I want to be mentored on. And it's difficult, but you have your own set of things that you have to take care of, and you're not going to sit for 2 hours with me trying to figure out what I want. I need to do that homework ahead of time. If I'm coming for some help and say it's a technical mentorship, I better have done my homework. I have better have tried. And the more people see you being prepared, the more willing they are to give you their time.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing to that for people who are listening. It is okay if you don't know what area you want to focus on, but when you talk about being prepared, it's about doing that homework, saying, okay, here are the 4 options. This is how I look at these 4 options, and then going to a mentor and say, can you help me make a decision? Because that is still very focused and not vague, and they'll see that you have done your homework.
I think there's another thing that I've seen where people come to me and they go, I want to go become X, I want to become senior manager or director, whatever. What are the 10 things I have to do to get there? There's a little bit more to it. There's no checklist. There is no, single formula of how you get there. It's more about, okay, let's have a conversation about you want to achieve that. Why do you want to achieve that? Then
Right.
what in today in your skills and experience, and where are you in, and what's the gap between here and what you would need to be able to be in that role.
Right.
And so you're thinking about some of those things, and there's enough tools online, there's enough videos in the internet that you can get a little bit of that work done ahead of time before you come to someone and ask them for help.
Right. Sylvia, that's it. That's all I had today. Thank you so much for your time, for
Thank
sharing
you.
your wisdom. I will be posting this and I'll drop you a note and share with you what comments or questions I get from people.
Sure. Happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much.